Welcome back. So, today I think we're going to go over a bunch of the updates, announcements, little articles, whatever that we missed over the past month, starting with the updated plans and the QA. And maybe this should end up being its own video, we'll see. I think I'm going to try to just lump everything together into one video, but if it goes long, then we'll separate it out. So, for the updated plans, some of this we all know by now is already in the game, but starting from the top, almost completed. There's the free release on Steam. That's out. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The improvements to the account linking system, that's just another part of putting it on Steam. They're updating the in-game tutorial for the UI and giving better descriptions for game mechanics. They're going to be giving the engineers new built AT guns at higher BR. That'll be really cool. Um, on that topic, I kind of hope that they do similar things with some of the other buildables. Or in the very least, I kind of hope that they add more buildables to different classes, but we've talked about that a little bit in the past. I think the big one that I would personally like to see is some sort of triage center. And whether that comes from the medics or the radio operators or whatever, I would just really like to see a location that you can go to after you've secured an objective to get replacements for your squad. And there's a few other things that they could do, buildable wise. Like I think it'd be really cool to get like a heavy mortar pit that you could build. But I think the big one for me is some sort of triage center. But it'll be nice to see them getting a better AT gun. Admittedly, the AT gun that we can build right now, I think it's a pack 40. Um, that might just be for Germany though. I can't remember if it's different per nation. Because I think there are times when it has been, and there are times when it hasn't, and it might be dependent on beer. I don't build AT guns that often, to be entirely honest. I really just use them when they're on the field or whatever. Um, but yeah, it's a cool change. Hopefully, we'll see some of the nicer, heavier AT weapons, like a pack 44, I think that whatever the 88 one is. I build them all, or and I guess not build them, but I call them in all the time in Steel Division. Um, we also have silver and research point changes, so converting excess research points into silver, silver rewards for battle hero medals, revised earnings in conquest mode, and a veteran box with old event rewards for silver. So I've heard some mixed things about the battle hero medals. I think I heard that there was a cap at like 5. I feel like it shouldn't be capped. You aren't really making that much silver off of them anyway. Um, I think it's something like what 2,500 silver if you get all of them um, per battle, and that's really not that much given the amount of time it takes to play a battle. Like let's assume it's not Conquest. Let's assume it's any other game mode. You could be in there for 15 minutes, or you could be in there for like half an hour. But either way, it's like 2,500 silver. It's a gun, I guess. It's not even a full. It's not even a full upgrade for some of your upgrades, which is kind of shitty. Converting excess research into silver though will be nice. Um, there are definitely a lot of nations that I have a fat stack of research points just collecting dust. And don't get me wrong, it's nice when an update comes out because I can sit there and take the excess research and instantly unlock things. The thing is, at this point, I have so much excess research that being able to do anything with it is nice. I mean, it would be nice if I could shunt it all into like Japan because I actually do still have a handful of things to research there. But being able to turn it into silver will be nice. There's there's a lot of various equipment that I've kind of just slept on upgrading because it's so expensive to do the upgrades on it. And it is like a tangible benefit to upgrade your equipment in Enlisted. It's just when you're playing all four nations, and especially if you're playing like multiple BRs, it becomes prohibitively expensive to spend silver on like every gun that you have or every vehicle you have. You kind of have to pick and choose like what your favorites are and what you really think are worth upgrading. So that might help a bit with that. Revised earnings for Conquest will be nice. See, if Conquest maintains its current like short time duration, but it got rewards similar to the other game modes, even though the other game modes are longer, I think it would feel better to play it. Like it's still not a game mode that I particularly want to play in a game like Enlisted. I think it stands out as being too gamey. But I also recognize that during certain events, it has a real benefit in that some events will say, hey, go and play 10 matches, right? And if you can get through a conquest game in like 10 minutes and it takes you, I don't know, 25 to get through a normal game, then there is a benefit during those events to having a short duration game mode like Conquest. I just don't think that Conquest really fits what I'm looking for in Enlisted. And then that brings us to the Veterans box. Now, the Veterans box has a lot of promise, potentially. It sounds like it's going to be RNG based, so I think you can look to War Thunder for how it's going to play out. It's probably going to be like the silver boxes there that technically they have old event rewards in them, but it's like a 1% drop rate and you spend like 10,000 silver a pull, so it's probably going to be a huge silver sink, which sucks. And it's probably going to have low drop chances, which sucks. And ideally, what I would want is some sort of token that you pull out of it that you can use to get whichever one of the event rewards you want. But knowing the snail, realistically, it's probably just going to be a random reward, and hopefully it'll prevent you from getting duplicates. So, in an ideal world, I think they would just put some sort of system in place for you to earn a token over time and then spend that token to get an old event squad. Or even better yet, um, treat it like what's a good example of this? I don't know, like Azure Lane, I guess, where you have old events that are on like a permanent rotation, where there's like a daily limit to how many times you can participate in these old events. There's like tokens that you would earn over time, and then they were always available. So whenever you felt like it, you could go in and you could do those old events. I think that might actually be a decent way to handle it. I probably didn't do a great job of explaining that, but basically over time you would accumulate tokens up to like a cap, I don't remember what it was. And then you would be able to spend those to go in and do like a mission, like one I think you'd do like one mission per token, and it basically made it so that these old events that were permanently available, there were still like limits to how much you could do them, but they were always available. And I think they could do something similar to that, like have, I don't know, the old paratrooper event from like the spring of last year with the Italians, right? Have that be permanently available, and every day you can complete like one or two of the like tokens, because like right now with the current event, um you need to play every other day for like 14 days or whatever. So in theory you need like 14 tokens, right? So make it so that you can do one token a day per event, or like one token a day for one event. um so it still takes you like half a month to unlock them. Then you can start on your next event. There's enough events at this point that a player could theoretically sit here and like work his way through all of the various events and probably take him like 6 months or whatever anyway. So I don't think it would be a bad system. I would rather see something like that than a random loot box that's gonna charge you a shitload of silver for very, very low drop rates. Now, on to the other side, in development. So, new battles, new frontline, new battlefields, and combat events. Hopefully, a new frontline will give us something on the Japanese front. I would guess that because we just got Rzhev, that it's probably not going to be Manchuria, but I still feel like it should be Manchuria. Um, I just think that would be a more, I don't know, varied, diverse, interesting setting than going to another island. Right now we have Guadalcanal for the Japanese, and I feel like the obvious choice to move on from there is going to be some sort of late war campaign, so either Iwo Jima or Okinawa. I feel like those two are like the obvious two choices. They might even do a combo of both, but I think it would be more interesting, and I think it would probably do more for the game to put it in Manchuria. Playing as the Americans, you already have a lot of variation in what battlefields and locations around the world you can go and fight in. And I kind of feel the same about the Germans. The Japanese obviously are hurting the most. They haven't gotten anything new in over a year as far as like a new setting. And while the Russians did just get Rzhev, they still have fewer locations than the Germans and the Americans. So it's my hope that we'll see Manchuria. And whatever the new front line is, of course, that'll bring new battlefields. They may even have just new battlefields for current established front lines, which is fine. Um, I'm curious what combat events actually means, whether that's something in game or if that's kind of like our monthly event that we have. I couldn't tell you. The fact that it's listed with battles leads me to believe that it's something that happens in a match, which if they had things that could randomly happen that would disrupt a match, that would be kind of interesting. I'm curious how that would work out though. And I'm curious to see what their implementation is. If they've already talked about it, it's something that I haven't read about yet. So, also UI improvements, options to postpone booster activation. That actually will be great. Um, I'm going to be honest, I don't really pay attention to the boosters that I get in Enlisted because I pretty much get a booster, and whatever I do, whether I play well, play poorly, whatever, booster's gone. So I basically play every match as if I don't have a booster. But the ability to postpone them, depending on how that works, sounds really good. Uh, I feel like the way that they should implement this is less like you're postponing it and more like at the end of a battle, it just asks you, would you like to apply a booster to the battle you just played? I mean, I feel like that would be the solution that would probably make people the happiest. I'm curious if you'd have to postpone it before you go into battle or if you get an option to postpone it while you're in battle or what, but we'll see how it goes. Then on to matchmaking improvements. There's going to be a preferred map system. We've all seen that. Well, not all of us, but anybody who's played War Thunder has seen that. Basically, you get like one or two bans, and then I think you get like five favorites. So then the matchmaker tries to take that into account when it selects a battlefield for you. I will appreciate that. Hopefully it's done by nation. Because with War Thunder, it's just by ground battles, by air battles, right? But the thing is, every nation can end up on every map in that game. It's not like that here. So hopefully we get like five preferences and like a ban, and hopefully that's by nation. I can tell you playing like lower BR Russia, I'm heavily going to prefer Moscow just because I like Moscow. Um, for like lower BR Germany, I'm probably gonna prefer Tunisia. I don't know. I feel like I get since back in the spring they changed it so that Ardennes and Normandy were both playable at low BR. Which, by the way, I like that you can play them at low BR, but I feel like I barely ever see Tunisia now, and I really like Tunisia, so that's probably where my preference is going there. As for Japan, I don't even know. They're all basically the same. There's just not enough maps there. So they're going to be reworking rules for groups. Um, I'm curious how that's going to work. I'm also not 100% sure that it's necessary, but whatever. Because I feel like right now it prefers to match groups with groups, but I could be wrong. It might just be that there's always people playing together, so I don't know. The silver bonus for joining any team, that's probably going to be a good thing. Penalties for deserters, also probably a good thing. And the ability to invite friends to ongoing battles. So I think what they're trying to do there is make it so that you can deal with people on your team leaving, because it's like a well-established issue with Enlisted that people leave, and because of the way that the game is set up, it doesn't like backfill people after they leave. Um, it kind of makes sense for like your average matchmaking person. You want to get into a fresh battle. You don't want to drop into a battle that's half over where your team's getting crushed. But if you've got friends, they might want to drop in and help you. So that makes sense. It seems like a cool change. For consoles, they're adding keyboard and mouse support, improving controller aim assist, kind of whatever. Customization improvements, the ability to change soldier voices, and rebalancing customization prices. The voices will be interesting. Maybe I can get an American who sounds cooler. Um, Rebalancing their prices. I'm curious what that actually means. Hopefully, they're not going to be getting more expensive, but I suspect they probably will be. And I think that's mostly because they've been throwing lots and lots of free appearance change tokens at us. But we'll see. And finally, gameplay changes, improvements for the rider class. This has been very, very long overdue. We've needed an update for the rider for, what, 2, 3, however long the rider's been out now. A very long time. Um, Hopefully they'll handle them similarly to how they handle the APCs. Um, I think I've talked about it before, but it probably also deserves its own video. But I would like to see them treat riders and APCs more like assaulter, like well medics going into assaulter twos, or like I don't know AT soldier 1 to AT soldier 2, that kind of thing. I think the rider is kind of the logical precursor to the APC, and then I think your APC 2, which would be like think you're going from like a truck to an actual armored vehicle, so like a half track or eventually like a BMP or whatever, right? Um, I would like to see something like that. So then the riders would adopt a lot of the I don't know quality of life that makes APCs worth using. So like a mobile spawn point, for example. I feel like the way you could handle it with the rider is that the bike itself acts as a spawn point, but it only acts as a spawn point when it's stationary. So you go and you park it somewhere, and it acts as a spawn point, but while you're moving, because you don't have, transport capacity, it doesn't. Um, there's a few other ways that they could handle it, but I feel like a lot of the other things that they could do with it tend to become more like gimmicky. Because I'm thinking about it as like a recon vehicle. They could also have some sort of recon system with it with like detection or even like area denial. That would actually be cool. So they could make the rider class an area denial vehicle where instead of acting as a spawn point, it has a circle around it for like, I don't know, 50 meters where it denies spawns. So anything within that circle, like even if there's a spawn beacon there, they just get disabled until the bike moves. I think that would actually be really cool as like a disruption class. All right, so on to the Q&A. So, will you rework animations, especially running animations? Yes, they're working on it. So, that'll be cool. You mentioned considering the possibility of letting players change the amount of shells and tanks. We haven't forgotten. We see that players are requesting this feature. However, implementing payloads is very complex and extensive mechanic. It's not a priority. See, this is something that I would really like to get right here. I know it doesn't sound like a huge deal, but there's a lot of tanks in Enlisted that are more specialized than they might initially seem. Um, so take any of the German BR like two. I don't think there's any at BR3. So like BR2 tanks with the short 75. Depending on the variant, you'll get like APCBC, HE, and like smoke and heat. And some of them won't get heat. But regardless of which one you get, the APCBC is. I'm not going to say it's completely useless because there are lots of thin skin vehicles, BR1 and 2, that it can deal with, but it's not useful enough that you need like 35 shells of it. Realistically, I would be happy to take like 10 or 12 APCBC shells and then take everything else as HE and bring like 3 smoke shells or something like that. And then on the ones that use heat, I would just get rid of everything but the heat shells. There's just no point in bringing anything other than the heat shells. But that's just using those as an example. There are other tanks that I feel similarly about. Um, like the jumbo. I probably would bring a lot more HE. I would probably bring a lot less of the solid shot AP, and I would probably bring more of the APCR than the solid shot AP. Um, because it's a BR4 tank and you run into like Tiger 1s and Tiger 2s and like Panthers. So more often than not, I find that I'm not shooting the solid shot AP at things. I'm usually shooting the APCR. So it might even be worthwhile to just completely drop the solid shot AP. Moving on from there, do you plan to expand the number of servers? So Oceanic, Asia, whatever. At the moment, this could further fragment the player base, so it sounds like they're not really interested in it. Are there plans to limit players who don't play infantry and consistently stay in tanks or fly planes? That's me sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of the like I do usually run lineups that have everything on them, but especially during events when I'm trying to get through the daily stuff we need to do for the event, but I have lots of other things I need to do that day, so I want to get through it quickly. Those are definitely days where I'll sit there and run like those degen loadouts that have lots of planes or lots of tanks or whatever in them. But regardless, what do they say? Would like to avoid restrictions. We hope to solve the problem through other means, such as altering maps, introducing new mechanics, and improving old ones that will help players counter vehicles in the gray zone and aircraft. Like, again, this is something that needs its own video. It's also a topic that's been beaten to death, but I don't think that the tanks or the planes themselves are the issue. I think that there are tools available to deal with them very effectively if that's what you want to do. Um, I think that tanks can be very vulnerable. I think the planes, like especially if you've got like a guerrilla AAA set up somewhere in the back and you wait to shoot at them until they're flying past you, so that it's hard for them to pinpoint where you are. Like I've absolutely played that cat and mouse game with an AA gun on the ground for the whole battle, and they can be very very powerful. It just requires somebody to choose to do that, and I think the solution there is less changing the ability to spawn in planes and more being able to build AI controlled AA guns. As far as tanks, really the only issue is that the Americans don't have a good shoulder-launched AT weapon, so give them the Super Bazooka and tanks cease to be a problem. Although, you know, counterpoint, they could just get rid of the gray zone and I wouldn't complain. Anyway, one of the recent events showed that there's demands for PvE. Will you continue in this direction? We've had a lot of fun developing the PvE for the April Fool's event. Glad you enjoyed it. However, maintaining a PvE mode permanently would be challenging, not only due to implementation difficulties, but because we want to avoid having two games in one. See, I think it would be really interesting if they did have a PvE version of Enlisted. The problem that I think they run into is that the bots are too stupid right now to actually do it. Like, they're situationally gods, but they are usually too stupid. And I feel like it wouldn't be that great. But like, look at World of Warships, right? They have their own bot mode that you can play alongside their normal mode. It plays exactly the same as the normal mode. I think you get reduced rewards, but the battles are also usually a little bit quicker. But I think for something like that to work in Enlisted, they would need to make the bots less bullshitty. Like I think that's the best way to describe it, because right now, if you come within arm's reach, you instantly get bayoneted, and every once in a while they'll shoot you through like 19 bushes, right? But and this is something that they could change for Enlisted in general, right? I would like to see something with the AI where they can see like a 45-degree cone that goes out like 100 yards, and anything in that cone they shoot at, and if there's like bushes or buildings or whatever in the way, then, or if it's outside that 45-degree cone, then they don't shoot at it until they get shot at. But then once they get shot at, they obviously know something is over there and they can shoot back at it. Like, that's my ideal implementation. And if they had something like that, and then they made the like pathing on the AI a little bit smarter, they probably could do a PvE mode, and it probably would be kind of fun, and it could play the same as like the normal game. Um, but I don't know. I guess it also kind of depends on player numbers, but it's probably something worth developing for like the long term, just in case. Because if they ever do drop their player numbers so significantly, they can always fall back on having a PvE game mode like that to keep the game alive. So I don't know. Will there be an option to separately purchase British and Italian soldiers from various classes? We're considering allowing players to change the voice, name. Okay, but that only talks about the voice and the name. That doesn't necessarily talk about the uniforms. So, and I've talked about this before, but in my opinion, they should not bring in new national trees to Enlisted. They should make sub trees. In doing that, they need to also make it so that you can choose what a soldier is. So, choose if they're British or American or whatever. And it's fine if they want to put it in the appearance tab where it's like you click on the little flag or whatever and it changes them. Um, I don't really care how they implement it, but they do need to implement something like that. I would also like to see some winter uniforms for the Italians. Um, or at least the ability to use the dark uniforms in like Normandy. Because I'm pretty sure they still consider them as like desert uniforms, even though they're very clearly dark enough that they would fit in. But I digress. Um, will there be a colorblind mode? So the colors in the game HUD were specifically chosen so the people with color vision deficiencies could play it without problem. However, since you're asking, we may have overlooked something. Pay attention to this again. So they're going to try to improve it. Will you improve or rework the customization system? For example, adding seasons, autumn, winter, summer. Unfortunately, this approach isn't suitable for Enlisted. Besides seasons, there's also the time period to consider. Uniforms of Summer 41 and Summer 45 can differ, which is reflected in game, and we don't want to lose that. So instead, we're planning to analyze the current customization system to possibly adjust the order price relative to the amount that a soldier can realistically obtain. We plan to address this after we finish balancing the silver earnings. Okay, so that's probably what they're talking about up above. Um, that makes sense. So a uniform that you can use in more locations would be more valuable than one that you can only use in like one location. That makes sense. Um, I feel like they can at least tie uniforms to specific campaigns or like front lines, whatever we're calling them now. Which I think they kind of do that right now, since you can like tab between like Normandy and Ardennes and whatever, right? I think the issue comes when you have a uniform that can be used in multiple locations, but you can't actually apply it to multiple locations because they're like physicalized quote unquote pieces. If you understand what I'm getting at, like basically if you have a uniform for an American dude, um, and you pull it off of him in one location, or I guess a German is probably the better example for this. If you've got a uniform for Stalingrad and the same uniform gets used in Ardennes, right? If you apply it to him in Ardennes, then if you tab to Stalingrad, it doesn't show it there, and then when you go into battle, it doesn't apply it, or at least last time I checked. It may have changed. They keep changing this, so I don't know. Are there plans to rework the rider class? Currently, its effectiveness is questionable. Will other countries get motorcycles? Yes. Well, that was above, so big shock. As you answered earlier, you decided to abandon the idea of veteran soldiers, but are there any plans for something similar in terms of concept and mechanic? We don't have any such plans, but we had ideas to make a second layer of progression for soldiers. We might return to this in the future. Eh. Like, eh. I don't know. I'd have to see how it was implemented. I really don't have an opinion on it. The idea of having to level a soldier a second time though sounds annoying, but we'll see. If it's like cool customization that changes the way that they perform in some substantial way, then maybe. I don't know. Are there plans to limit or nerf AP mines? We have plans to rebalance or change the mechanics of AP mines. At this stage, we're considering several options, allowing engineers to find mines and disarm them, reducing the blast radius, making it harder to cover a large area, lowering the durability. I like that we can place individual mines. I still feel like there should be an order to have all of your guys place them so that you can make like a little minefield. Um, I think the main issue with mines, and this might actually be something that people have overlooked, I'm not sure. I think the main issue with mines is that the activation range on them is significantly larger than what you would expect it to be. Like you can walk up to a mine and stare at it and it'll probably go off even though you're not standing on it. And I feel like that's a problem. Like I think they need to change them since they're all like pressure mines. I think they need to change them to actually be pressure activated so you have to physically like walk across it instead of being this like invisible box around the mine that triggers it. And I think that would get rid of most of the issues because then you would actually be able to just step around them and the likelihood of you actually stepping on it would be a lot lower. Um I don't actually think the quantity of them or the locations where they're placed are really an issue. I know a lot of people bitch and moan about them on spawn points, but I feel like that's part of the risk reward mechanic of using a forward spawn. Like I don't think it's unreasonable for the other team to booby trap your stuff. Anyway, moving on. Are there plans to make it possible to transfer from PC to console? Implementing it would be difficult. It's unlikely. See, that's too bad. I kind of wish that you could get a unified account where you could just log in with either or, but it is what it is. How will the new deserter penalty work? When leaving a battle early, players will incur a penalty on experience and silver earnings in subsequent battles. It won't apply if the player spent enough time in the battle, the specific values, yada yada yada. Okay, so basically, if you leave, you're going to be penalized in the next battle. That might actually be a decent change. We'll see. It also, from the sounds of it, if you're in the battle long enough, it won't take effect. So I think that's like hope is lost, that kind of thing, where you've been in the battle for like 10 minutes. It's clearly a waste of time. Your team's getting run over. Battle's over, go next. Does that make sense? Will there be any gameplay changes for players? For example, currently too many explosions or a rework of the gray zone. Let's see, World War II had many explosions, bombs, artillery. Game reflects this, trying to ensure that infantry can always react somehow. Working on the gray zones. Yeah, like I said before, I'd be perfectly content for the gray zone to just go away. I don't actually think it adds that much substantial to the game. I mean, you would actually have to do something with landmines if they got rid of the gray zone. Um, like you'd have to limit where you could place them. So, like the current gray zone, I don't think you could put mines in it, right? But realistically, you should just be able to run back there. Like TNT would be fine, but like AP and AT mines probably not. Even that, I feel like AT mines could probably be okay, but whatever. That's just the saboteur in me coming out. Will there be a filter or a search function for weapons and storage or something similar? Sometimes it's easy to get lost. Good idea. We've added it to their to-do list. Yeah, I don't know. Like, they're right, that is useful, but I think it probably takes about as much time to scroll through the list, so I don't know. Cool that they're going to add it. Are you considering any improvements to premium squads, for example, adding a universal slot for specialists? You know, we are going to talk about this in another video. They did really, really good with the American Engineer squad that just came out, and I'm really, really proud of them. But yes, this is a request we've seen from players, therefore we're considering the possibility of giving all premium squads a universal slot for an additional specialist where possible. That's huge. I love it. I hope it happens. Will anti-aircraft guns also get an improved version like AT guns? For now, they're trying to balance the infantry versus aircraft fights with one set of AA guns, but if it doesn't work out, they'll consider adding better ones. Yeah, that'd be cool. It'd be cool if they came out and added like heavy AA guns. Um like the 88 for Germany, the 85 for uh Russia. Um See, I don't know with America if I'd rather have a 76 or if I'd rather have a 40 mil. I feel like I'd rather have a 40 mil, but whatever. The roadmap didn't mention anything about custom matches in the mod editor. Are there any planned changes for them? They're consistently working on improving them. It can be complex and time consuming. So I'm sure some of you have been through this. A lot of this looks like it's going to be pretty decent. Some of it I'm kind of just waiting to see what the implementation actually looks like. But in general, it's looking pretty good. There's a few things that I am really looking forward to. I want to see what they do with the riders. I want to see what the new front line is. The veterans box, I absolutely want to see what they do there. There's a few things throughout here that sounded pretty interesting. Yeah, looking forward to see how all this gets implemented. So let me know what you think down below. As per usual, get out there, kick ass, take names, and win your games.